So how many decisions do we make every day about people we don't even know? On days when we pass by a homeless individual and we think to ourselves, they just had the motivation. There's plenty of jobs available. In that moment, we decide who's motivated. As our eyes fall upon an individual with a disability, and we say to ourselves, such a shame they'll never be independent. Without a second thought, we decide who's capable. When we fail to engage with an individual who's recently been released from prison, or shows signs of prior addiction, fearful of what might happen, we decide who deserves a second chance. What's amazing is that most of the time, we don't even realize we're doing it. When I was in school, decisions were being made about me quietly, efficiently, and without a single question being asked. And one of those decisions happened every day in a school cafeteria line. When we talk about shaping the future, our conversation typically falls to the standard topics: economic development, workforce pipelines, infrastructure, all important, all critical as we look ahead. Today, though, I want us to consider something just a little bit different, something that we may not realize could have a significant impact on our community. It's personal, and it's something each and every one of us controls. When I was in elementary school, I was one of the kids that didn't have the newest clothes or trending electronics. Most days, I didn't even have enough money for lunch. I remember walking through what we called the borrow line, and I'd ask quietly for a peanut butter and jelly sandwich on credit because I didn't have the money for a hot lunch. That walk felt like a public announcement of everything that I lacked. And sometimes it got just a little bit worse when the lunch lady would remind me that if I didn't pay up, I might not be able to eat. For a kid that just wanted to fit in and belong, the shame and embarrassment of those conversations were overwhelming. And each day I would leave wondering whether or not I'd be able to eat the next. After all those years, I still find myself sometimes asking the same question. Why did no one ask why? Maybe they didn't want to know that my parents struggled with alcoholism, and that sometimes alcohol was prioritized over nutrition. Maybe they didn't know how to help or felt they lacked the tools and resources to intervene. Or maybe they didn't realize that kindness, in moments of shame and pain, that could have been their most powerful resource. My situation didn't change much in middle and high school. My clothes were old, my haircuts were infrequent. In hallways that celebrated the cool kids and the athletes, I was an easy target. I was also one of those chorus and band nerds, so my love for musicals, theater, and everything on the stage made me vulnerable to ridicule. And eventually, being labeled the gay kid in class. The judgment during those years taught me to hide who I was, to guard myself. I told myself that their opinions didn't matter, but the truth is, they always did. During my senior year, I was called to the principal's office because of poor grades and attendance issues. No one asked questions. No one tried to understand. Instead, my principal told me that if I stayed on my current path, I would never find success and I would end up in a dead-end job. Then he sent me to in-school suspension for 3 days to figure it out. It was in that moment for me, and over those 3 days, that something shifted. I became determined to succeed, despite the decisions and assertions of others. What I would learn very quickly, though, is that determination alone, that wouldn't be enough. Success would eventually come, but meaning would come from something else entirely. From learning not just how to move forward, but how to bring others along with me. I finished my senior year working part-time at Sears department store, and then following graduation, moved to a full-time sales position with a local competitor. Work became my proving ground. It was there where I knew I could overcome all of the judgment, all of the opinions. I could blaze the trail forward. It was also during this time when opportunity knocked. A coworker who worked part-time at the store while working full-time for a local nonprofit asked if I would be willing to join his team as a sheltered workshop supervisor. The job, he told me, would focus on individuals with disabilities to teach job skills and training. I didn't have any experience, so without hesitation, I accepted the job. And I accepted the job for one reason: me. I felt that this was my chance to lead, to succeed. What I didn't realize in that moment, though, is that the leadership lessons that I was about to learn were not going to come from books or leadership trainings. They were going to come from people. On my first day in that job, I was told that the individuals we worked with were considered unemployable, their disabilities too significant to find success in a competitive workforce. Not knowing any better, I started out believing the same. But over time, and as I got to know the individuals that I worked with, my colleagues and I started to see the hope, the potential, the dreams that were possible for each of those individuals. And by leading through optimism and with hope, we started to see success. My first true lesson in leadership came from those society had written off. They taught me to never underestimate the power of human potential, because where belief, kindness, optimism, and hope reside, opportunity can certainly follow. My learning didn't stop there, so years later, as I was working as vice president for the same nonprofit, I had the opportunity to meet another young man. He joined our team, bright, eager, determined to be the difference maker in his family. Every day he would arrive at work, energized, engaged. But after lunch, everything would change. He'd become short-tempered, irritable, difficult. At 10 a.m., he was the coworker that everybody loved. By 2 p.m., they couldn't stand him. So I prepared myself for the conversation that no leader wants to have. I was ready to let him go. But when we sat down, I didn't find defiance. I found hunger. You see, this young man's paycheck was enough to pay for the meals at home, but didn't stretch quite far enough to be able to cover his lunch the next day. Each day, he would sit and watch his colleagues nourish their minds and their bodies while he pushed through exhaustion and pain. What we were dealing with was not a performance issue. It was a survival issue. Once we understood, we found solutions. He was able to keep his job, move up, lift his family forward. And I walked away extremely humbled. How could I have missed it? How did I forget about that little kid in the borrow line? How did I fail to ask the most important question? Why? Titles have a way of convincing us that speed matters more than understanding, that decisions are more important than people. But leadership isn't about being efficient. It's about being present. If I hadn't stopped to ask, that young man would not have just lost a job. He would have lost dignity, possibility, momentum, all because I was ready to act before I was ready to listen. Over the years, I've learned multiple lessons, and they've come from the most unlikely of sources. From individuals working to rebuild their lives after addiction, long after others had given up on them. Individuals working to overcome the scarlet letter of a criminal past. Individuals who've lived in their car, surfed couches, been on the street, eager to find just that one opportunity to find a place to call home. And individuals with disabilities, learning challenges, and a host of other obstacles that are so often invisible at first glance. And they have taught me to ask myself over and over, how often do I let urgency override kindness? How often do I judge instead of support? Have I forgotten my own experiences and dulled my empathy? What opportunities have been lost because I didn't first lead from my heart? So today, here in Savannah, I want to challenge us to make a collective commitment that before we decide, we lead with kindness first, without judgment, with the true belief in the human potential and opportunity that exists for everyone, and with empathy as our most powerful tool. If we can do this, what trajectories might we change? What potential could be unlocked? Who might one day say, in the famous words of Elphaba and Glinda from the musical Wicked, "Because I knew you, I have been changed for good." Our future won't be shaped solely by our businesses, our buildings, or our budgets. It will be shaped by the way we choose to show up for one another. And kindness, paired with empathy, optimism, and hope, that, my friends, that is our most powerful resource.